Steve here with ICRPG behind the DM screen. In this episode, we will be talking about stats. That's right, numbers, numbers, numbers. Do they have to be that complicated? I don't think so, because let's face it, if you need one of these to play the game, that's not really the kind of game I want to play. Like and subscribe. At first glance, these look like two totally different characters, but at the end of the day, what is really the difference between this guy and this guy? It all comes down to stats. Sure, this guy looks huge, this guy looks small, but who's to say if this isn't some Master Yoda who could totally kick that guy's butt? Or who's to say that that guy isn't super intelligent, maybe not even that strong, just highly understood? So that's what we're going to get into today. It's all about stats, and there are going to be plenty of opportunities for you to give your thoughts, comments on how you make stats work for you at your table. Page 25 in the ICRPG Master Edition goes over the core stats, and essentially you have 6 points to assign to any one of 6 stats. So you can assign 6 to one of them and make that super heavy, or you can divvy up all 6 and each one gets 1 bonus point or whatever it would be, or 3 and 2 and 1, or 3 and 3, or whatever you want to do. You have 6 points to divide among these 6 stats. Now, we'll just go through each of these, what they mean, and then I'll give you some of my own personal modifications, and I really want to hear what you guys have as far as mods that work at your table. So the first one, strength. We all know what strength is. That's how strong you are. This has been a standard in RPG probably since the dawn of time, right? So I don't think that needs a whole lot of explanation. Dexterity. I look at dexterity as your maybe athleticism. You know, are you flexible? Can you jump over things? Just because you're strong doesn't mean you have dexterity. So this would be also used for weapons, for example, how good you are with a gun or a bow, or whatever it would be. Constitution is kind of a toughness, I guess, quotient. It is not just body, but maybe your resolve or your fortitude, or just how tenacious you are constitution-wise. Are you breakable? So that's that. Intelligence is essentially your book smarts. So just because you're intelligent doesn't mean you're wise. We'll get to that in just a second. But this would have to do with maybe puzzle solving, or how well you can figure certain things out, maybe mathy kind of things, whatever it would be that require book smarts. Wisdom is I always talk about wisdom as the practical application of knowledge. So are you streetwise? Just because you're smart and know a lot of things doesn't mean you know how to apply it. Wisdom would be how intuitive you are. And then finally, charisma. Charisma is something that you would use, for example, for persuading other people. How well do you have conversations? Are you friendly? Do people like you? Do they not like you? I play a character called Camp Green Lake, who's a bit of a curmudgeon, because he's kind of like me. And so he doesn't do well on the charisma side. But yeah, so that's what you've got: strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. 6 points to divvy up among them. Now let's get to some modifications. First, let's talk about strength. I don't know of a single RPG that doesn't have strength as one of its core statistics. In fact, I don't even know of an RPG that doesn't use the term strength for its core statistics. So if you know of any, please comment below. But strength is one of those things that is such a basic feature of a character that it's almost impossible not to have it. So, as I said in the intro, though, what really makes the difference between this guy and this guy? It's how you assign the stats. So, yes, on the surface, this guy looks like he would be way stronger than that. But I'm kind of given the example of the ant. So, pound for pound, or size for size, an ant, I forget how much of its body it can lift or whatever. Strength can come in many forms. So, My proposal is, and I'm not quite sure how to do this without being, again, I want to make it simple, not mathy, but are there limits to the strength or specific strengths? In other words, maybe they're strong in a certain way, but not so much in others. Just because you can power lift, 800 pounds or whatever it would be, doesn't mean you can open the top of a bottle, right? There are various kinds of physical strength. I remember reading about Princess Bride and Andre the Giant. And Andre the Giant, of course, was huge, but they would say that he got so fatigued because his body weight was so much that it was hard for him to even carry around. So yeah, he was strong in certain ways and then totally weak in others, So what what constitutes or what makes up strength? I'd love to hear your ideas if it's worth having a modifier on strength versus just he's big and strong and that's all there is to it. Let me know what you think. Next we have dexterity. This is one that I actually replace. I don't even use dexterity. I don't reference dexterity. I replace that with the word skill. And skill for me encompasses more than just physical dexterity. It's more than just, is somebody accurate with a bow, or can they do X, Y, and Z? Are they flexible? Skill to me is how well someone can execute a task, whether it's mechanical, maybe it's, assembling an engine or picking a lock even or whatever, but anything that requires a skill set, I throw under the simple category of skill. That's it. Constitution is one of my personal all-time favorite stats in any RPG, and again, I use a different word for it. I call it grit. Constitution is simply that. It is how tenacious you are as a person in your character, at your core being. How tough are you? Can you take a licking and keep on ticking? Are you Rocky Balboa? That's kind of my thing, being from Philly. Can you get punched in the face and get back up again? Or do you turn tail and run? How tenacious are you? Again, Constitution, I call that grit. I'm going to be doing another video in the future. I'm really excited about it. And it has to do with something that we don't even use really in ICRPG, but it has to do with alignment. That's a big thing, of course, in D&D, is, how your character aligns as far as are they evil? Are they good? Are they neutral? Are they chaotic? How does that work? Because Constitution really plays into that. The idea that, okay, this is my character at their core. I am going to behave this way no matter what. If people try to interrogate me, they waterboard me, whatever it would be, I'm not going to give them any answers, or this is how I am. And yeah, I'll just, before the first sign of torture, I'll cough it up. What is your constitution? What is your grit? And I think, again, for me, this is one of my absolute favorite stats because it goes more on the psychological side of gameplay. This is where you really get into the role playing rather than the dice rolling, so to speak. This is how you, as a person, approach a problem, how you tough it out, how you get through it. And to me, that is sort of the core of the character. So Constitution, hugely important to me. I just call it grit. Let me hear what you call it. Okay, now don't kill me too bad in the comments on this one, guys. But I am going to heavily modify intelligence and wisdom. Here's the deal. I don't like these two stats being separated. I think it makes things confusing. I've always found it to be a little bit strange when you're like, okay, if I roll, is this an intelligence roll? Is this a wisdom roll? As I said in the beginning, I know the difference in intelligence between intelligence and wisdom. Intelligence is essentially book smarts, and then wisdom is the practical application of knowledge. I combine these into one single stat that I just call smarts. That's it, smarts. Because it involves really your general intellect, but also the ability to apply that intellect. And I don't like breaking up the two because I think it bogs down fairly often in the actual game. Let me know if you guys have found the same thing. But like I said, I kind of feel like wisdom is the more important. Like if I had to choose one, I would just say wisdom versus intelligence, because to me this this fares very little in actual gameplay. Like, oh, I'm just super smart, I know things. Well, if you don't know how to apply it, it doesn't really matter, does it? So I would always opt for wisdom over intelligence. So instead, I just put them together and I call it smarts or brains or whatever you want to call it. But these, for me, don't even make up two different things. I just lump them all together. Again, be nice in the comments, but definitely let me know what you think. Last but not least is charisma. Once again, I use a different word. I call this simply personality. Charisma can encompass a whole bunch of things, including how personable somebody is. Do they crack jokes? Are they witty? Are they able to track in a conversation? I think probably the biggest use in ICRPG is persuasion. How likely is it for someone to follow what you're saying because of your charisma? And again, I lump that all together under general personality. Are you likable? Or when you walk in the room, everybody hates your guts immediately? You know, do you have that sort of jerky quality to you? Or is it something that you can persuade other people to go along with what you say? So charisma, pretty straightforward. I just call it personality to kind of keep that in check, because most of the time when you're pitched with, say, like D&D or Pathfinder or whatever, charisma tends to be one of those things that is almost pigeonholed to the use with bards and things like that, where it's just people that their only sort of attribute is to talk their way out of things or to sing a tune or whatever. I think that can be much more well-rounded if you play it right, charisma or personality. Well, there you have my thoughts on stats in ICRPG. Instead of having 6, I boil mine down to 5. Again, I do strength, skill, constitution, smarts, which encapsulates wisdom and intelligence, and then personality. So I like just those 5 things. I think that's enough. I think it makes things a little more streamlined. And I also toy with the idea that instead of having, for example, 6 points, obviously I would only have 5 to divvy up. But I'm also toying with the idea of just doing 4, which means that you can't just give +1 to each one of those things. Something's going to be deficient. That's one that I'm playing with that idea. I'm going to give it a try at my table. Let me know if you've ever tried to do that before, where you essentially have fewer points to assign than you do the number of stats or core characteristics. I think that could add a fun element to it. And again, I want to hear your thoughts on what you name different things, how you keep track of that at the table. I think stats are one of those deals where you can really get bogged down into stats. And of course, that's part of the key feature of RPG is fiddling over how you're going to make your character. But the less fiddly we can make it, the more fun ultimately the game becomes. I am also not a fan of modifiers for those stats, because then we start getting mathy. We'll talk about that in a future video when we get into character development and we look at the different types of players that you have. Maybe, you know, whether it's a warrior or this, and it adds X, Y, and Z to your stats. That can be good and bad. We'll talk about that later. Again, please let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and may your dice always roll with advantage.